Okay, let's unpack this. You know that specific moment in a superhero movie, usually right around the start of the third act, where the hero realizes they just can't save the world alone.
Hmm.
They stop trying to do everything themselves, they turn to their team, and they basically say, okay, you have the power now, it's your turn, go.
The classic passing of the torch moment. Yeah, it's a staple of the genre.
Exactly.
Mm.
And that is precisely what is happening in the source material we are looking at today. We are doing a deep dive into Matthew chapter 10, and honestly, this feels like the pivot point of the entire narrative.
It really does.
Up until now, if you look at the chapters before, Jesus has been the solo act. He's the teacher, the healer, the one doing all the heavy lifting while everyone else just watches.
Yeah.
But here, the dynamic flips completely.
It really does. And to capture that shift, the text actually changes the vocabulary it uses for these men. I mean, up until chapter 10, they are called disciples. But here, for the first time, Matthew introduces a new title, apostles.
And I think that distinction is huge for you, the listener, to grasp right off the bat. Because in English, we kind of use those words interchangeably. But in the Greek, they mean very, very different things, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. A disciple, makoltes, in the Greek, is basically a student, a learner. You sit at the feet of the master and you absorb information. But an apostle, apostolos, literally means a sent one.
A sent one.
It's a delegate. It's the difference between being an intern who grabs coffee and watches the meeting and being an ambassador who is sent to a foreign country with the full authority of the government.
That is a massive promotion.
And a massive responsibility. Because Jesus isn't just giving them a new job title. He's essentially outsourcing his own authority. The text explicitly says he gave them authority over unclean spirits to drive them out and to heal every disease and sickness.
Which sounds incredible on paper. I mean, if you're one of those 12 guys, you're thinking, finally, I get the superpowers. It sounds like the ultimate power fantasy, but, and this is what jumped out at me while reading the source notes, once you get past that part, the actual job description is terrifying.
It is.
It reads less like a victory lap and more like a survival guide for a disaster zone.
That's a great way to put it. To really understand why the instructions are so grim, we have to look at the context. We're in the Galilean ministry, historically around, AD 28 or 29?
Okay.
The political temperature is just boiling. Everyone wants a Messiah who is going to crush the Romans militarily. They want a general. And here is Jesus taking 12 guys with no resources, no weapons, and telling them to deliver a message that is guaranteed to get them arrested.
And let's look at that team roster for a second, because when you actually break down who these 12 men are, it makes no sense. The text lists them in pairs. You have the fishermen, sure, Peter, Andrew, James, John. They seem like the core group.
The logical choices, yeah.
But there are two names on this list that, socially speaking, should not be in the same room, let alone the same camping trip.
I assume you're looking at Matthew and Simon.
Exactly. The text lists Matthew the tax collector and Simon the zealot. Now, for a modern listener, those just sound like job descriptions,
Right.
like Bob the accountant and Steve the activist.
Sure.
But historically, that pairing is a ticking time bomb, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's actually a miracle they didn't kill each other before the mission even started. You have to understand, a tax collector like Matthew wasn't just, an IRS agent. He was working for the occupying force.
For Rome.
For Rome. He was a Jewish man collecting Jewish money to fund the Roman oppression. He likely sat at a toll booth, overcharging his neighbors to skim a profit off the top. To a patriotic Jew, Matthew was a traitor, a collaborator.
So basically public enemy number one.
Right. And then you have Simon the Zealot. Now, the Zealots weren't just enthusiastic religious people. They were essentially Jewish nationalists, insurgents. Their entire political ideology was no king but God.
Wow.
They were known for carrying daggers Sicarii hidden in their cloaks to assassinate Roman sympathizers in crowds.
So Simon's entire worldview is dedicated to eliminating people like Matthew.
Correct. In any other context, Simon would likely want Matthew dead. If they met in a dark alley in Capernaum, it wouldn't end well. And yet, Jesus throws them together. He pairs them up. It really highlights that this kingdom Jesus is building isn't just a spiritual club. It's a new social order that overrides deep-seated political hatred.
It forces a unity that logic says shouldn't exist. And there's another dark cloud hanging over this list right from the beginning. Verse 4, it introduces Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus.
It's haunting, isn't it? Even here, at the beginning, at the moment of their commissioning, the narrator doesn't let us forget how it ends.
Yeah.
There's a traitor in the ranks from day one. It adds this layer of tension to the whole chapter. Jesus is empowering the very man who will eventually hand him over.
So let's set the scene. You have this ragtag group of rivals, fishermen, a future trader. Jesus gives them this massive authority to raise the dead, but then he gives them the travel itinerary, and it's exclusionary. He says, "Do not go onto the road of the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel."
And this is a stumbling block for a lot of modern readers. It sounds very tribal.
It does.
Like we aren't sharing this with the outsiders.
It definitely clashes with the modern idea of inclusivity. Why would he restrict the message like that?
We have to view this through the lens of what scholars call covenant order, not, racism or exclusion.
Yeah.
Paul talks about this later in the book of Romans. The formula is to the Jew first and then to the Gentile.
Okay.
It's a theological priority. God made specific promises to the line of Abraham, to Israel, and Jesus is honoring those promises first. He is the Jewish Messiah arriving for his people.
So it's about fulfilling the original contract before expanding it.
That's it, exactly. I mean, we know the plan opens up later.
Right, the Great Commission.
The Great Commission, exactly, at the end of Matthew is for all nations.
Mm-hmm.
But for this specific training mission,
Yeah,
the target is the house of Israel. It's a focused strike, not a global campaign yet.
Okay, so they know where they're going. But let's talk about how they're getting there. Because the packing list is, it's non-existent. Verses 9 and 10 are brutal. Do not take along any gold or silver. Take no bag for the road or second tunic or sandals or staff.
It's a demand for total, radical vulnerability.
I got stuck on no staff. No money is one thing, that's scary enough. But a staff was a basic tool for a traveler. It was for walking, sure, but it was also your weapon against wild dogs, snakes, or robbers on the highway.
By taking away the staff, Jesus is stripping away their ability to defend themselves. And by taking away the beggar's bag, which was typically used to store leftover bread or food for the next day, he's taking away their food security. He is forcing them to rely entirely on the hospitality of strangers.
The phrase he uses is, "The worker is worthy of his provisions." He's basically telling them to trust that God will prompt people to feed them.
Exactly. It's an exercise in trust. If you have a credit card and a hotel reservation, you don't need faith. If you have nothing but the clothes on your back, you have to trust that God has prepared a worthy person in the next town to open their door.
And this sets up what you might call the protocol of peace. When they enter a town, they look for a worthy person. They enter the house and say, "Peace be with you." And the text implies this is more than just good manners.
Right. In this context, that's not just a casual hello. In the Hebraic mindset, shalom peace is substantive. It's a heavy word. It means wholeness, well-being, the presence of God. Jesus describes it almost like a physical object. He says if the house is worthy, let your peace rest on it. But if the house is not worthy, let your peace return to you.
Like you can take the blessing back. That's a wild concept, that the blessing is a tangible commodity carried by the apostle.
It empowers them. They aren't beggars. They are benefactors. They might be hungry, but they are carrying something the homeowner needs.
Yeah. But what happens if a town rejects them? Because the reaction Jesus prescribes is incredibly dramatic. He says to shake the dust off your feet. I've heard that phrase used metaphorically today, like, I'm done with this situation, but it meant something very specific back then, didn't it?
It was a massive cultural insult.
Yeah.
Traditionally, when Jewish people traveled outside of Israel into Gentile lands, which were considered ritually unclean, they would shake the dust off their clothes and sandals before crossing back into the Holy Land.
Oh, wow.
It was a ritual cleansing. It meant, I am not bringing the pollution of the pagan world back home with me.
So if the apostles do this to a Jewish town,
They are effectively saying, you are no longer God's people. You are acting like pagans, and we are treating you as such. It's a visible pronouncement of judgment. And Jesus adds that on the day of judgment, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah, the archetypes of wicked cities destroyed by fire, than for that town.
that is intense. And it really marks the shift in tone for the chapter. We go from you have authority to heal to shake the dust off, and then suddenly the training wheels come off completely. Verse 16 involves a metaphor that I think is one of the most jarring in the New Testament. I am sending you out like sheep among wolves.
It completely inverts the natural order. Think about it. A good
Okay.
shepherd is supposed to keep the sheep away from the wolves. The shepherd's job is protection.
Right.
Here, the good shepherd is deliberately sending them into the pack. He isn't promising to keep them safe from the wolves. He's promising that the mission happens among the wolves.
And he tells them to be shrewd as snakes and innocent as doves. I love that image. Don't be naive, but don't be malicious. You need street smarts. But the dangers aren't hypothetical. He gets very specific.
All right.
He talks about being handed over to councils and flogged in the synagogues.
And we should clarify what flogging meant here. This wasn't a slap on the wrist. The standard Jewish corporal punishment was 40 lashes minus 1. 39 lashes with a leather whip. It was excruciating, humiliating, and could sometimes be fatal.
And the key detail is where it happens, in their synagogues. So this isn't persecution from the Romans yet.
No, this is rejection by their own religious community. This is being beaten in the very place where you grew up worshiping. That adds a whole psychological layer of pain to the physical one.
That connects back to the fear of betrayal. He says they will be brought before governors and kings, which is scary enough, but then he says brother will betray brother to death and a father his child.
That is the heartbreak of this chapter. You have to remember, in the ancient Near East, the family unit was everything. It was your social security, your identity, your legal protection. You didn't have a 401k, you had children. For Jesus to say that allegiance to him will shatter those bonds, that is the most terrifying thing he could have said to a first-century listener.
But he does offer a lifeline. He tells them when they get arrested, do not worry about what to say.
The divine hotline, so to speak.
Right. He promises the Spirit of the Father will speak through them. It's this assurance that when they are legally helpless, when they are standing in front of a governor with the power of life and death, they have a divine defense attorney.
It's a promise of presence. You might lose your family, you might lose your safety, but you won't lose God's voice.
This discussion of family conflict leads us directly to the paradox. I think this is one of the most controversial things Jesus ever says. We think of him as the Prince of Peace, we sing about it at Christmas, but here in verse 34 he says, "Do not assume that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword."
It's a verse that has been weaponized and misunderstood for centuries. People read sword and think holy war.
So we need to be very clear here. Is he rallying them to violence? Is this a call to arms?
No, and the context makes that clear. The sword here is a metaphor for division, not a literal weapon of war. He's actually quoting the prophet Micah here, specifically Micah 7:6, which describes family strife.
So the sword is the message itself.
Exactly. Truth demands a choice. And when one family member chooses the kingdom and another rejects it, a divide is created that is as sharp as a blade. Jesus is saying that his message cuts. It separates. He isn't telling them to fight physically. He is predicting that the gospel will cause conflict simply by existing. It exposes where people's loyalties really lie.
It's about priority. He follows up by saying, anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me.
He is claiming a level of loyalty that supersedes biological loyalty. In the ancient world, honoring your father and mother was one of the highest commandments. It was the bedrock of society. Jesus is saying, I come first. If the choice is between your family's approval and me, you have to choose me.
And then he drops a phrase that we use metaphorically all the time today, but I bet it sounded terrifying back then. He says, whoever does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Now today we wear crosses on necklaces. It's jewelry. It's on top of church steeples. But what did take up your cross mean to a guy standing in Galilee in AD 28?
It meant death. Horrific, public, shameful death. We have to remember, at this point in the story, Jesus hasn't been crucified yet. The disciples don't know the end of the story. To them, the cross wasn't a religious symbol. It was a Roman torture device used for rebels and runaway slaves.
So when he says this, they aren't thinking about theology.
They're thinking about the road to execution.
Yeah.
They've likely seen men carrying their crossbeams to the site of their death. When Jesus says, take up your cross, he isn't saying, deal with your difficult boss or handle your arthritis. He is saying, come and die. It is a call to total death to self.
Wow.
You are signing your own death warrant by following him.
That is heavy. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. It's the central riddle of the faith.
It's the great paradox. If you grasp for safety and control, you lose your soul. If you surrender your life to the mission, you find true life.
Speaking of safety, Jesus seems to sense the fear in the room. I mean, look at what he just said. You're going to be arrested, betrayed by your parents, hated by everyone, and you need to carry a cross. The room must have been dead silent.
You would think so.
But then, right in the middle of this dark warning, he pivots to one of the most beautiful images in the Bible. He talks about sparrows.
Yes. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny?
I looked up the details on this. The penny, it's actually an assarion in Greek, right?
Correct. An assarion was a small Roman copper coin. It was worth about 1/116th of a denarius. Basically less than an hour's wage for a manual laborer. It was pocket lint.
Pocket lint.
It was the smallest coin you could really use.
And archaeologists have actually found these clay bird traps in Galilee from that era, right?
They have. Sparrows were the cheapest meat you could buy. They were the food of the destitute. If you were too poor for lamb or goat, you ate sparrows. They were a commodity, barely worth counting.
So Jesus is pointing to these birds that are practically worthless in the market too for a penny, and he says, not one of them will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father.
Think about the logic there. If God tracks the penny sparrow, the disposable bird, how much more does he track you?
And he gets incredibly specific. The very hairs of your head are all numbered.
It's an argument from the lesser to the greater. If God cares about the trivial, he is obsessed with the valuable. He is telling the disciples, you are valuable. God isn't distant. He's intimately aware of every detail of their existence.
It reframes the fear. He says, do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul.
It puts the physical danger into a spiritual perspective. The worst the wolves can do is end your biological life. That sounds terrible to us, but Jesus is saying that's actually limited damage. They cannot touch your standing with God. Your soul is out of their reach. The only one you should fear is God himself, and God is the one counting your hairs.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to look at how Jesus lands this plane. He's given them the authority, he's given them the warnings, he's told them they're valuable, and then the final verses are surprisingly domestic. He talks about a cup of cold water.
It brings it all back down to earth, doesn't it? It connects the high theology back to daily hospitality.
He says, he who receives you receives me. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones because he is my disciple, truly I tell you, he will never lose his reward.
This brings us back to where we started, hospitality. Remember, the apostles are traveling in a hot climate, on foot, with no money. A cup of cold water isn't just a nice gesture, it is life-sustaining.
And what I love here is the chain of command. God sends Jesus. Jesus sends the apostles. So if you open your door to a barefoot, dusty apostle and give him a drink, you are actually serving God himself.
That's the key. Jesus is validating the support network. He says, whoever receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward.
That concept blows my mind. You get the prophet's reward. You get the same credit as the guy getting flogged and preaching to crowds just for being the support team.
It democratizes the mission. It tells us that the kingdom isn't just built by the people on the stage or the people in the history books. It's built by the people who open their homes. Not everyone is called to travel and face the Sanhedrin. Some are called to simply offer water. And Jesus says that role is seen, and it is rewarded just as highly.
Wow.
The person who funds the mission or houses the missionary is a partner in the work.
So if we look at Matthew 10 as a whole, it's this intense blend of opposites. You have immense authority, raising the dead, but total vulnerability, no shoes, no money. You have the promise of extreme suffering, betrayal, floggings, but the promise of ultimate protection, God numbering your hairs.
It really dismantles the idea that faith is about being comfortable. The mission is dangerous, the stakes are life and death, but the oversight of God is absolute.
It's a wild ride of a chapter. It moves from the mountaintop of here's your power to the valley of here's your cross very quickly.
It sure does. It forces the disciples to decide if they're really in.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought from that last section. We focus so much on the apostles, the ones sent out, the ones doing the big things. But verse 41 lingers with me. You don't have to be the prophet to get the prophet's reward. You just have to receive the prophet. In a modern world where we are often obsessed with having the platform or the microphone, what does it look like to be the receiver? What does hospitality look like when the prophet might just be someone in need of a cold drink or a listening ear?
That is the question worth asking.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.